Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Northern Miner Podcast, and I'm your host, Matthew Keevil, and this is episode 51. One more, and we'll be celebrating our 1 year anniversary, roughly, I think. We might have missed a couple weeks, so we might have gone over, but officially, episode 51 is next week, so we'll try to put something special together for you. We thank you for following us along on this journey. I can't believe it's been a year. This is a bit wild and crazy. But this week, we have a pretty strong episode for you. Lesley's going to swing by. Actually, we met in a coffee shop, so it's a little. Once again, we have an on-location segment where there's actually a baby crying in the background in this one, I think. But interesting content. We are going to be talking about Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. Lesley just finished her recent geological wrap-up of Canada's North. You will recall we did the Yukon previously, but this is just finishing off actually the last of Lesley's cross-Canada geology tour, wherein she did a look at most of the Canadian geological provinces and sort of did province by province special sort of articles that are going to come together at our Canadian Mining Symposium in May in a really cool magazine where we're going to have sort of a cross-Canada look at the geology and exploration potential for the different provinces and geological landscapes in the country. So we'll go to that in a little bit. Right now, we'll quickly run through our macro. Things haven't been looking so good. As we've talked, I had a few humorous conversations over the past week with people coming back from PDAC and being like, oh no, PDAC drove metal prices down again. Hey, we're not saying anything about correlation causation here, but there does tend to be a PDAC lull. So hopefully it's just a little bit of a hiccup in our road to recovery. But metal prices have been down over the last week. We've noted gold has been down. We do expect the U.S. Federal Reserve to increase interest rates on Wednesday. They have the March 14th, 15th meetings of the Fed. The interest rate hike should come down the pike based on what they say is continued job strength and lower unemployment rates. The veracity of those figures, depending on who you talk to, the health of the U.S. economy can be a little bit of a contentious subject to talk about, whether those numbers are truly indicative of underpinning strength or whether they're a little bit of economic accounting mumbo-jumbo remains to be seen. But once again, we also saw strong numbers in Canada with the unemployment rate at multi-year lows. So yeah, the economies have been trekking along. One thing that we note in terms of gold is that there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of European elections coming up. We mentioned that there is a major election in France in April, May, and then the market was also focusing on Wednesday's Dutch parliamentary elections. Scotiabank noted that while the risk of a Eurosceptic party seizing power is small, a strong election performance could renew concerns regarding what could take place in the French elections. So basically what we're looking for is more Brexit problems in Europe. That briefly bumped gold, but it's nothing compared to the looming U.S. Fed rate hike expected on Wednesday, which subsequently drove gold downwards. We're just at $1,203.90 per ounce at the time of recording. Meanwhile, silver is at $16.99 per ounce, and West Texas Intermediate oil is trading at $48.39 per barrel. Speaking of energy and industrials, we did see a rather strong report from China's National Bureau of Statistics over the weekend, announcing what they called a strong economic performance to start 2017. As we mentioned last week, China has sort of revised their annual GDP growth target downwards to about 6.5%. Which is only a marginal decline from about the 6.7% they posted last year. But we will be keeping an eye on that on the demand side, both in terms of consumables like copper and also the met coal and iron ore markets, because we have seen a bounce back, as we noted, late in 2016 in terms of met and seaborne coals. And what happened over the weekend, actually, interestingly enough, a major accident at a coal mine in Shaanxi province, China's biggest coal producing region, has led to a suspension in mining activities in Shaanxi County. This is mostly thermal, but some of the met supply is also affected. Furthermore, sources have told, I believe it's Bloomberg, that some shipments of premium hard coking coal that were due to arrive in China in April may be postponed till May, given operation issues at a key Australian port. So we continue to see a little bit of tightening in terms of seaborne coals. And as far as China is concerned, we'll keep an eye on their propensity to sort of apply regulations to how often coal companies can produce or coal mines can produce. So we'll pay attention to that as well. But the big story, I guess, in terms of specifically copper, which was trading at roughly $2.63 per pound at the time of recording, is on the supply side. This is the big story right now. Supply side issues are consistently been in focus since the start of the new year when it comes to copper. This has led to a broadly bullish tone across a number of outlets. We have been reported that there has been no hint of further talks at Escondida, BHP's mine, and the strike at Freeport McMoran's Cerro Verde operation began in earnest this past weekend. So what we have here is workers put down tools at Freeport's majority-owned Cerro Verde copper mine in Peru, halting 95% of copper production at the site. This is also a union issue. Nearly 1,300 unionized workers are participating in an indefinite strike at Cerro Verde in a bid to secure reportedly improved family health benefits and a larger share of profits. Meanwhile, a local paper, La Repubblica, reported that striking union and representatives of Cerro Verde are meeting today to find common grounds in their demands and end the strike. But as we've seen at Escondida, these can be protracted long-term labor situations. And as noted, these have sort of changed people's tune a little bit as far as near-term copper demand supply dynamics. So we will keep our eyes on that as we move forward. We've been watching sort of this supply side story evolve in the copper space over the past, 3 or 4 months now. So that sort of wraps up our macro. Take a look at the Fed meeting, March 14th, 15th, the U.S. Fed. We will likely hear about the interest rate hikes on Wednesday. And we'll see how that affects gold. A few analysts I've talked to note that it probably puts a near-term cap on the gold price. So we will pay attention to that. But for now, let's hop over and have a visit with Lesley. We are going to chat about geology and prospectivity in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. We will dig into some of the junior companies like Nighthawk Gold and Auryn Resources. We will talk diamonds. We will talk gold. We will talk nickel. And we will talk a little bit of auxiliary base metals, some zinc and things like that, iron ore. Let's hop in, have a little chat with Lesley, and I'll see you on the other side to talk actually about the Canadian Mining Symposium. See you then.
Well, I thought that today I would just kind of go on the fly about the geology and metal districts of Northwest Territories and Nunavut.
Nunavut. Yeah, that's right. Nunavut. That's because you just did the big geological piece on the Northern Geology, right?
Yeah, and it should be coming out sometime, I guess, when you're listening to this. It'll be coming out either already or this week.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it was N.W.T. and Nunavut then, because we did the Yukon previously, right?
We've basically done every single province and territory in Canada. This is my last article.
And this is this is all going into a magazine that's going to London for our Canadian Mining Symposium. So this all gets wrapped up together. So you may have caught over the course of, I guess, how long have you been working on this, like a year?
Oh my gosh, like 6 months, I think.
Yeah. So various podcasts, we've talked about the metal districts because Lesley's been making her way across Canada, essentially, right? So, so how are we going to kickstart it with... do we want to split Nunavut and N.W.T. up, or are they kind of the same thing? Or?
Definitely not.
Okay.
We're not splitting it up.
Okay, good. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, and our production editor, David here, he would laugh at that because he sent me a message the other day, and he was like, Lesley, we might have to split these territories up. And I was like, if you split those territories up, I will walk out of my job today. And so, sure enough, we're not. And the reason being is because they're both sharing the same sort of geological cratons, right? Yeah. And it's really important to kind of like put them together because what happens in one like territory is also happening in the other territory.
Yeah.
And I learned some really crazy things when doing this.
Okay.
I guess maybe I'll just start with the gold deposits, right? Outside Yellowknife, you know how you have Terra X, and then you have Nighthawk Gold up north.
Yep.
And that sounds good. And they're actually exploring greenstone belts in an Archean terrain, which is actually similar, if not identical, to the Superior terrain, which is in the like Abitibi and Red Lake area and all the gold prolific districts. Yeah. So it's exact same deposits that they're looking for up north.
Okay.
But the really cool thing that stood out for me is that, you know, the TMAC property, Hope Bay, and then you also have Sabina's Back River. Okay, cool. Those are in Nunavut, right?
Yep.
But I never really acknowledged before that those deposits are in the exact same geological terrain. It's in the slave craton.
As Colomac?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and of course, like Hope Bay has like 5 million ounces of gold. Same thing with Sabina's property. And so when you look at that, you say, gosh, you take that craton and you compare it to the Superior, where, you know, you have the Abitibi and you have all the gold deposits in Quebec and Ontario. And it really starts kind of becoming more clear about the potential of the slave craton in Nunavut and also in Northwest Territories. And that was like kind of blew my mind a little bit. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that they were part of the same beast.
Well, because I remember you talking to Dr. Michael Byron at Roundup, who is the president and CEO of Nighthawk, right? And you guys had a pretty serious conversation about why that Colomac property was underexplored previously, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but the same thing with a lot of these deposits like Amaruq, like Agnico's, they all came out of nowhere, basically, right?
This is the next interesting thing.
Yeah.
So the gold in Amaruq that you see, right?
Yeah.
That you hear about.
And whale tail and all that stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
So this is a big thing that I learned. And it's a really important take-home, is that all the other gold deposits that we know of, like Meliadine, Amaruq, Meadowbank, those are all hosted in the Ray Craton. So the Ray Craton and the slave are like sutured together about 2 billion years ago.
The Ray is really old, right?
No, it's kind of like a bit younger than the slave Craton.
The slave, okay,
but it's still Archean to late Proterozoic rocks.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing is about the Ray, and really important thing to remember, is that it has been deformed like crazy. It's been like hit on all sides by cratons during the assembly of North America, and the rocks were completely metamorphosed.
Okay.
So really high temperatures, really like intense pressures. So what happens when you have a gold deposit that's Archean age and then suddenly gets metamorphosed? It just gets obliterated. So any sort of like Archean age orogenic gold deposits and VMS deposits, or maybe like Archean magmatic nickel copper, they wouldn't have survived those tectonic events in the Ray.
Yeah.
So there's pockets of greenstone belts in the Ray that are still preserved, that are shadowed, that hasn't had that really high metamorphism that you see in the parts.
Okay.
But it's something for people to really look at when they're exploring the Ray. Because you can't go finding a greenstone deposit, which is a reflection of the grade of metamorphism, aka green schist.
Yeah.
That's why it's called greenstone.
Green schist,
You're not going to be able to find a green schist orogenic gold system in an amphibolytic rock.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It doesn't make sense. So, interestingly enough, all the gold at Meliadine and Meadowbank, that gold mineralization occurred 1 billion years after the gold events in the Superior and in the Slave.
Wow.
They're a lot younger.
So why don't you? I'm just trying to get sort of a map view of what you're talking about. So the Ray and the Slave, do they both run through the N.W.T and Nunavut sort of equally, or is it one?
So like if you have Nunavut and you have Northwest Territories and Nunavut, and then you have the Great Slave is off to the west, right? There's like this ball, this pink ball on maps, and then sutured against that is the Ray, and the Ray is probably the most extensive craton I think in North America. It just shoots from like the Canadian Cordillera all the way to like I think Greenland.
And it comes a bit south, right? Because you see it in parts of Alberta.
It goes into Alberta. Just the end of it goes into Alberta and Saskatchewan. But look at a map, that's probably the easiest. Yeah. But the Meliadine stuff, like that's really like relatively young gold mineralized event. And how that happened is that, we have between the Ray and there's another craton right next to it called the Hearn. There's this huge tectonic zone. It's called the Snowbird. Okay. And a lot of the gold deposits that you see in the Ray is sitting on top of the Snowbird. The age of the Snowbird being 1.9 billion years, which is around the same time that gold was introduced into Meliadine and Amaruq and whatever. Yeah. So they think that maybe the Snowbird has something to do with it. And the idea there being is that the fluids that traveled up through these snowbird structures found a chemical trap, and the chemical trap being banded iron formations.
Yeah.
Because that's something else we hear about heaps. It's like banded
Committee
iron
Bay, you
formations
hear that a lot,
in Nunavut and in like other parts. And I always thought to myself, why do we always hear about banded iron in up north, but you don't really hear about it much in the Superior?
Yeah, no, you don't. Yeah, they use a lot of the iron magnetism to prospect up around those district scale areas in the territory for sure.
Yeah. So now the gold mineralization that we see up north doesn't really discriminate between, like, you can get banded iron formation Archean age or Proterozoic age.
Okay.
It really depends, but it's a really good trap. But in the case of the Proterozoic age deposits, the ones that we know, a lot of them are hosted in banded iron formation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I guess like the main origin has kind of come and passed, like the greenstone belts, and you name it, has already been.
And there's whackload iron associated a lot of the time.
And there's tons of iron,
yeah.
So because you have the Mary River up in Baffin Island, which is part of the Committee Bay Gold Belt, which is what Auryn
is looking at.
And there's big, like really high grade iron deposits, so high grade that they basically mine out of the ground and ship it back.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it's profitable. So I thought that was really interesting and something important to note.
The other thing I wanted to ask is we talk a lot about gold, but obviously there's diamonds is a big conversation in N.W.T. So does it play into
it? Well, like I mentioned, the slave craton.
Yeah.
Okay. So at around 2 billion years ago, when the North American plate was being assembled, you had this other like chunk of rock called the Bear.
Okay.
On the west side of the slate, and it just like collided in. And when it was colliding, it started to subduct underneath the slate. And if you can imagine it, the subduction plate was very shallow, so it got basically stuck underneath the slate.
Okay.
And so what ended up happening was that lengthened the thickness of the crust to the point where everything below was pushed down into the diamond stability field.
Okay.
So where anything that was like carbon was converted into diamonds.
Okay.
In this really thick package of this like combined rock package with the slave and the bear. And then around 55 million years ago, kimberlites just basically popped through the whole thing and brought the diamonds up to surface. And that's in the Lac de Gras region that we see. And also in the Nunavut portion, that's Jericho as well.
That's right, yeah.
So all part of the same sort of system. But interesting enough, I actually made a mistake with the, Canalaska.
Yeah.
I think there was a bit of confusion that the Ray Craton holds all the diamond mines. It actually doesn't.
Okay.
That's the slate. So all the diamonds that we know of in that part of Lac de Gras is in this Great Slate because of that added thickness.
It was a Canalaska quote that said the Ray province was important for diamonds, but that didn't turn out to be particularly the case. But the other thing that's interesting, so you also see a lot of diamonds around Quebec in the Otis region and stuff like that. And there's greenstone there too. Is it a similar event sort of thing that's going on probably there?
I know that I think the span of diamond ages and kimberlite heights in Canada go from 55 to 100 million years ago.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so some really young, some not so much. I know that there is some diamonds kind of, not in the Ray, but in Baffin Island.
Yeah.
The Ray is sutured against the Trans-Hudson origin.
Okay.
So just bear with me here. And there's this exotic chunk of Archean crust that's entangled within this orogenic belt that was super old. And they found some diamonds there, and that's Peregrine's Chidliak.
Peregrine, yeah. That's a remote project, right?
Yeah, well, it's on Baffin. But they got the Mary River mine there, too.
They do,
Some things kind of work.
And like we said, diamonds aren't as big a deal because you could fly it out on a plane.
Yeah,
right?
you totally...
in
my pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that the take-home there is with kimberlites is, they do follow old, ancient crustal sutures because it was easy for those volatile, rich magmas to follow those and break through the crust and grab it out. So there's that one. So that's really interesting. The other thing, take-home, is, the Athabasca Basin, and it's counting for 20% of the world's uranium production.
Yeah.
Well, we have the exact same basin spanning the border of Northwest Territories and Nunavut. It's called the Thelon. Did you know that?
Well, Colomac Energy, which is a company I'm familiar with, has a uranium project up there, and Areva was actually, as the French uranium conglomerate, as everybody who listens to the show probably knows, was active up there exploring for uranium as well. There is some, and they were very close to, I think, putting something into production up there.
Yeah, they got kind of.
Yeah, but I mean, also the logistics is just. I mean, you're gonna have to ship it out by boat, probably, right? So, I know with the Peregrine thing, they were thinking of building like a massive winter road to the project. But like when you get into those kind of areas, it's like the actual infrastructure and logistical challenges are fairly enormous. Yeah.
Well, and that's what really kind of drew my attention with Nunavut and Northwest Territories is because it hasn't been. Because it's so remote. When you look at a geological map of Canada, you'll see all this crazy detail, especially in BC, Yukon, and Ontario, Quebec. But the farther you go north, it becomes more big, indistinguishable blobs of pink, and like it becomes like more monochromatic.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because government geologists or industry geologists have never really gone in and mapped it in any meaningful detail. It's been at like 100,000, 250,000 scale maps, which, by the way, is like from the airplane.
The explorers, really, right? There hasn't been.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these places where, we make a lot of assumptions in the geology up north.
Yeah.
And the idea of, Meadowbank and Agnico has made a really great go of it. And then you have all the gold projects going on in Northwest Territories. I mean, the last remaining piece is basically access, because the deposits are there, and there's multi-million ounce deposits for gold, and then you have diamonds, and then base metals not so much because you have to move a lot of material. But it happens. Like you have Polaris and Pine Point; those are N.W.T deposits.
Yeah, we talked about those.
That were really successful, and they've been mined out, and they're world class. So there's still lots of opportunity in the north, and it's extraordinary how. For me, when I was like learning about it, I was like, gosh, like there's so much there to explore for and so much to discover. And if all those stars align, you got yourself something like really good.
Yeah, it's a challenging place to work. I did some kimerlite troughing up in N.W.T when I was like 17, and we worked out of fly camps and walking through the muskeg for like 15 kilometers with a troughing equipment to go into the low-lying streams and trough for kimberlite is like a challenging experience. Let's just say I lost like 20 pounds that summer or something like that. It was it was fairly extreme. It was good though. I mean, it's good to. I was actually working with a junior at a joint venture with De Beers at the time, so it was it was a fun experience. But it was you can see when you've been up there, right? Just how challenging it is. Like you need helicopters for everything.
Yeah.
Like you just think about the costs of exploring up there. That's why I was talking to Auryn. I think it was Auryn I was talking to, and they're using those drill rigs that are on treads. They were looking at those I think they're rotor air blast drills that they can they have a radius of 200 kilometers. Don't quote me on the numbers because I can't really remember. But you can remote control them from a location. They just drive across your property and just drill
Is it
shallow.
Those vacuums that you put in your home?
Yeah.
Go forth and
No, you have to. Actually, maybe you can program them. You probably can. So you just give them a coordinate and they just go.
Yeah, you're sitting back drinking coffee, watching the muskox pass.
All these soft geologists now don't have to do anything. They just send the robots. Send the robots.
Send the robots and give me the Wi-Fi password.
But that was a big thing too, because I remember Sean Ryan was talking about that in the Yukon as well, was using drone technologies and robot technology to prospect in those kind of areas.
Yeah, radiometric surveys are probably sick up there because it's so exposed.
Yeah.
And the radiometrics are it's just beautiful. You can map with radiometrics if you get a good survey.
And I mean, what's the surface or overburden like up there? Is it mostly
glaciated?
Mostly glaciated?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Exposed to glaciated, I guess.
Yeah. So,
and it'll vary because we're talking about the whole.
Oh yeah, it's a large area. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting for people to keep to the districts that are active.
Yeah.
Right, and then they can find anything. I mean, case in point, Agnico. They're like, oh, Meadowbank is going to be running out of ore in the next 2 years. Maybe we should go out and look over here. And they threw a stone, and where it landed on a 3.7 million ounce gold deposit called Whaletail. And it just goes to show that, there's gold there. You just have to go looking for it.
So you've talked to a lot of the geologists who work up there. You've talked to the guys at Agnico and Nighthawk, obviously. Is there any sort of common thing they all say about working up there, or any sort of observation they have that has been helpful to them when they explore? You said they threw a rock. I don't know if they... is there anything that kind of stands out to you when they're working up there that all the guys seem to do and girls seem to do when they're...
I think maybe permitting is always a big challenge.
Yeah. And structural, obviously, because there's no data on...
There's very little geological data that's available because it hasn't been mapped, hasn't been explored properly, so that's all going to work against them. But in places that do have enough information, they can go in, but then you got to get permits and land use permits to be able to go on land, so and that holds them back out.
Well, we know what's going on with Sabina, obviously, at Back River.
Yeah, they had the caribou herd that was going through.
Running around all over the place.
It's like breeding grounds.
Yeah.
But I was talking to the government there about that, and from the sounds of it, the community was really like gung ho for it. It's just unfortunate that it was.
I think it was actually a First Nations band from N.W.T who had the biggest issue with the mine because the caribou herd was a big source of food. Yeah, it's like you got to pay attention when you're doing it with caribou. They like run across the whole country basically. So like they have
downstream effect.
They have massive migration loops. So like you could be building a mine in one place and then like somebody 200 kilometers away will be like, oh no, that mine might affect me. And they'll be like, why? Be like, 'cause caribous run from here to there, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, apparently it has a lot of like community support. People want to have go ahead.
Locally, I've heard that
locally,
too.
Yeah.
So,
but it was federal, and because the issue there is with Nunavut is that it's not devolved yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this limbo sort of government system where people have to like go through permitting 3 times.
Well, even the Yukon and N.W.T, the evolution is not very far down the
I don't know how long
track.
the Yukon has been, but Northwest Territories it devolved in 2014, so they're still kind of going through.
They're going through it. Yeah.
Like they're walking on their own.
Yeah.
With Nunavut, they aren't walking on their own. They've got like 3 people. So the feds were just like kibosh the project.
Well, the other thing you have to remember about those areas is population density is not very high, so it's
fly in, fly out operations.
Yeah, and we talk about that in the Yukon all the time too. That like the entire territory has a population of under 40,000 people, so it's like
all those people still need to work.
Yeah. But you also have to remember when you're dealing with or working with them that their bench strength is only so much, right? Like their capacity to process paperwork and do everything they need to do is they just have less people, right? So when you're working with like a province like BC or Ontario or Quebec or something, they just have way more capacity to deal with all that. Not that makes us any better at it, but we have more people running around. That would be worse though. You just get more bureaucrats. So I don't know.
Right.
But Well, but that was a lot that we kind of went off on the socio-political side of the geology corner there.
But the one thing too, lastly to mention is like I mentioned how Chidliak diamonds off of Baffin Island. To the south, you have this exotic terrain. It's called the Trans-Hudson Origin. So all these rocks have been like beaten up during the Trans-Hudson. Yeah. Now this is kind of a newly recognized thing. And I was talking to government geologists yesterday. And when they were mapping it last year, they found a lot of ultramafic sills. Now, if anybody knows about the Trans-Hudson Origin, in my previous articles, you'd know that it falls along the Thompson Nickel Belt and the Rankin, like the Cape Smith Belt in Quebec. So major nickel deposit regions. Yeah. And so they're saying that there's potential to see for magnetic nickel copper in southern Baffin Island that hasn't been recognized before. So hot tip for anyone who has been
Where is Aston Bay working? That storm project that they had, because they had a JV with BHP, but it's not anymore.
I think it's farther north, like near Polaris.
That makes sense.
I have to put it on a map.
We'd have to look it up.
That's kind of like not.
I know it's way up somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
It's like in the Arctic.
All right.
Anyways, so something interesting, and keep
go.
your eye out for the article. It's rad ass, and I think I might even like spin it into like quick summary Canada breakdown, Canada-wide geology. Because it's actually really easy when you think about it. But
you should do it on a map, like point form.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing a video, Matt. I was like going to get a little video and be like, "This is this, everybody."
There we go.
And suddenly the veil of enigma around why people are exploring wherever it is that they're exploring will suddenly hit you like a ton of bricks. And you'll awaken in that moment with your eureka and say, it all makes sense and I know where to look next. So that's kind of my idea. Anyway, this has been the Geology Corner.
Live from the coffee shop.
Live from a coffee shop. I'm all awake now.
Welcome back to studio. So that pretty much wraps up Lesley's cross-Canada geological journey, wherein she dropped in to talk to some of the geological surveys and stitched together for us a broad and I think a really good resource, sort of a geological map of Canada, and to highlight some of the different areas and mineralization styles, as well as some of the projects that are going on in these jurisdictions, be they mines or more grassroots exploration oriented. I think it's going to be really cool, and she's put together a few independent articles that you can find on our website, northernminer.com. So please do hop over there. If you don't have a subscription, think about picking one up, because you can search Lesley's articles. And if you're interested in Ontario, or if you're interested in Quebec, the East Coast, BC, etc., we have in each individual area, sort of, Lesley has done a nice map and also a discussion on the geological terrain. And that's all going to come together into a really cool magazine, and that's upcoming. So do keep your eye open for that. But that segues quite nicely into what I wanted to talk about next. Now, we had briefly mentioned last week the Canadian Mining Symposium, which is taking place on Tuesday, May 9th this year in London at Trafalgar Square at Canada House. And this is an event the Northern Miner is putting on in conjunction with the Prospectors and Developers Association, PDAC, as well as the High Commission of Canada in the United Kingdom and the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. And this is a really cool event. What we're doing here is it's basically a lead up to Canada celebrating its 150th anniversary of Confederation. And we have previously mentioned we had a really strong roster of speakers, and that included Robert Freeland and Lucas Lundin. Last week we got some absolutely terrific news. We've added to that lineup of speakers with another, two other, I should say, really promising executives, major Canadian mining executives, namely David Garofalo, President and Chief Executive of Goldcorp, and Kelvin Dushinsky, who is the President of Barrick Gold. And they will also be in attendance and probably giving a little bit of a speech, though I think we are still working on the itinerary for the event, but it's just going to be great to have some of Canada's leading miners there, alongside some really powerful entrepreneurs in the form of Freeland and Lundin, to talk about and celebrate Canada's 150th year of Confederation, but also its rich mining history and all the promise that we still have across the entire country. So it's going to be a great event. I believe sponsorship opportunities are still available. In terms of jurisdictional sponsors, we have the Northwest Territories. The Yukon government has hopped on board. The TMX is also sponsoring. And it's going to just be a good event, a one-day event. Once again, it is on May 9th in the UK. So do surf by our website. There's a great deal of detail on there. We continue to expand the list of really strong presenters, and I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for Canadian companies and Canadian representatives to meet individuals from European capital markets and sort of maybe potentially introduce jurisdictions and projects to investors across the Atlantic. So it's going to be really fun stuff, and we will continue to release information as people join as speakers, and also as we sort of fine-tune the agenda. So yeah, do take a look at the Canadian Mining Symposium. You can hop over to northernminer.com. All the details will be there. John Cumming, our editor-in-chief, wrote a nice little blurb on it, and we continue to look forward to that. It should be great. And as mentioned, that'll also be, I believe, where we roll out Lesley's big geological magazine, which covers all the things we've discussed previously, as well as a project we're doing with PwC involving use of capital. And we're going to do a roundtable involving the best use of excess capital by mining companies and explorers. And we have some really promising companies involved in that roundtable, as well as analysts and people on the accounting side as well. So we'll be rolling out the findings from that panel as well. So it's going to be a really fun event, I think. And who doesn't like to go to London, right? So yeah, do consider that and stop by our website to check that out. And whilst on the subject, please do like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check out our YouTube and SoundCloud accounts, and also please do rate this podcast on iTunes, because that helps us out a ton. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up our show for the week. Once again, we do appreciate your listenership, and please do check out northernminer.com. This has been Matthew Keevil, and I will talk to you next week.